that was being able to see the divine, see my body being held, know that there's a gift that we don't feel when we pass. Because both of those last two near death experiences, one out of body and one when I'm sick, I didn't feel my body. I floated out. You're going to pass without feeling it. So if you're witnessing somebody go through a horrific passing, just know that their loved one is not feeling that. They're already standing in the room. The body's what's struggling to shut down. And so I've learned a lot through each of these, but it also built itself on being the healer I am today, so I can help people go through whatever they're going through. And then on top of that, you think that you're all done. You're doing your work. You're following your mission. I get cancer. And so I said, are you kidding me? Now what? Do I tell people that I'm a healer and I get cancer? What do I do with that?
Welcome to Soul Explorers with your hosts, Gary Langley and Sally Taylor. Welcome to Soul Explorers. We're your hosts, Sally Taylor. My name is Gary Langley, and today we have Debra Martin with us. Debra is a certified research medium for the Windbridge Institute. She's also an author. 4 books, 5 books, something like that, right? 6 books. And she's been featured on Gaia TV. Her 3rd appearance on there is upcoming. Debra, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, both of you. It's such a delight.
We're thrilled that you're here and thrilled to get to know more about you and your story. So that said, could you give us kind of the short version of how you came to the work that you're currently doing?
Yes, I'll go back to when I used to meditate with girlfriends on a Friday night and thinking like this is so much fun, right? And you're seeing what you can get, and I always seem to be the voice of the circle, let's call it. And it was something we looked forward to all the time. And that's why I want to tell viewers is like there is no right or wrong way to meditate or to find and get to know what the afterlife is there for you. And so that was my beginning, and it was opening that door for me. And it wasn't until the night that Princess Diana had her car accident, I was out with some friends, and we were watching a sports basketball game. And at that time, I think it was a sports basketball game. It could have been just something on the TV. I don't want to be wrong. So either way, I remember it coming across the screen and it got everybody's attention. The place was silent. And I bet you everybody can remember what they were doing at that moment. And it shook us, right? And when it was time to leave, I can remember not wanting to get into the car. And I was going to be sitting in the back seat of a little sports car. So I was going to climb in and I didn't want to get in. There was something that was saying, don't get in the car. And I didn't listen to it. I didn't know what that feeling was. And my friends were like, Debra, you're just overreacting. You just saw this accident with Princess Diana. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Always listen to that instinct, right? So I get into the car and we're on a freeway now. And as we're driving down the freeway, it's late at night and there's not many cars on the freeway, but I just had this premonition, not knowing what a premonition was. I've never ever had one, but it was as if I knew what it meant. It was like I was getting the information and talking with my mind, right? So I get the information. It's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be hit. And immediately I said, no, 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 I'm not ready. And at that moment, a car struck us. It was like, as soon as I said not ready, it was all I remember is that bang. And we spun and took like 40 feet of guardrail out. And we came to a stop facing traffic. We couldn't get out. But divine intervention came to save us.
Debra, I love the story of how you did get out of that car. Could you share that with our viewers?
Yes. Okay. So we're sitting in the car and we can't get out. And we're panicked. And I have pictures in one of my books, Proof of Miracles, that shows the car wreck, and you would see how we couldn't get out. All of a sudden, somebody appears at the door and just kind of opens it effortlessly. And he carries each one of us to the embankment. And I can remember him looking at me and saying, "You're going to be okay." And I'm like, "But I'm not okay. I was wearing this one ring and it was squished my finger and it was bloody and it was hurting." I'm like, "Can you just help me get this off?" And he took it in his mouth, bit it. I have his teeth marks. And he pulled it off and he gave it to me and he said, kissed me again on the forehead and said, "You're going to be okay." Now he did that to each of us. He kissed each of us on the forehead. And so he went to the left, and when I looked to the right, there were like 3 ambulances, all these cars, and I could see that it was a van that hit us and spun and what do you want to say, turned off the embankment and was upside down. So I didn't know anything about that driver. That's all I saw. But when I looked back to the left, he was nowhere to be seen, and nobody ever seen him. And so that kind of was like, what? I got his teeth marks. I know he's real. Where did he go? What just transpired? I had to do research. What is divine intervention? Can spirit come down? Can an angel come down in human form? Like all these questions kind of just surfaced, and it opened my door to the afterlife. So it wasn't until my second car accident where I had an out of body experience. And this time I was sitting in a left turn bay, waiting to cross the street to go into the neighborhood. And as I was sitting, just listening to music, no premonition this time. And before I know it, I'm out of body. And I'm looking down, and there's a keynote here for anybody that has lost somebody in a car accident. We're taken before impact. There is no pain. So now I'm watching. I look down, and I see another truck carrying like tractor equipment behind it. And I'm like, this is not going to be good. I'm going to be crushed. But now I feel this big being behind me. And I hear the words, "Are you ready?" And they were so kind and gentle and loving. But I was like, I'm panicked, like, no, but I'm not going to survive that. I have 3 little kids. I'm a single mom. No. Instantly, I woke up in the back seat of once a 4-door Honda into 2-door. Everything that was inside was thrown into the street. And my seatbelt had broken. So I'm in the back seat with a mouthful of glass. A police officer and another gentleman come to the side of my car and say, ma'am, are you okay? We're so sorry. The man was in a diabetic seizure. We were trying to get him off the road, and you were what stopped him. And then he looked at the man and he said, "Are you okay?" And the man said, "No, I'm not. I'm really shocked. I should have crushed her. But somebody took my steering wheel and put me into oncoming traffic." At that very moment, when I heard those words, it was like a download. It just, and I was like, wait, I just saw something. So immediately when you have a download, it never leaves you. It's there. But in the midst of things, there was so much going on, I couldn't really think about it. So later, I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, I heard spirit. I heard their voice. I was speaking to it. So now I know we can communicate, right? And that kind of was opening my doors when I was learning about it, but I didn't never considered myself as a medium. So I started dabbling into that. And the next thing I did was I went to Dr. Gary Schwartz and Dr. Julie Beischel and was tested my mediumship abilities at the Veritas Center, which is now the Windbridge Research Center. So that opened my mediumship. So the third one was I was really, really ill. I was being seen by Mayo Clinic. I had a young daughter at home, and my other 3 children were grown. I was married at the time. And I was laying in a fetus position in pain. If I took a drink of water or even a bite of cracker, I was in so much pain. So I was at the point of saying, "God, take me. Just take me." So one morning, as I'm Laying down, I see a spiritual surgeon walk into the room. Now, being a medium, I'm not too scared, right? Like, what are you doing here? So I was just like, okay, well, let's just see what happens. And I can remember him cutting my abdomen open off to the left here. And he opened it up. I can remember it being excruciating pain. Think of it as having a straw with a strawberry in, and you have to squeeze that out. They were squishing and squeezing whatever they needed to get out of my abdomen. Now, I was like, I don't know if I can take this pain. So what do I do? Do I just take the pain? How am I going to do this? I know I need to get through this. So I decided I was going to remove my mind from it all by taking a couple of deep breaths and just kind of like just being and not being present with my body. So when I did, I just took this like, and when I took my breath out, I was now out of my body once again. But this time I was floating and I was feeling it and I knew I was going someplace and it felt so great. There was no pain whatsoever. And when I came to a stop, I can tell you guys, I'm standing, which looks like a cloud, like out of an airplane. And I'm like, I'm all alone. Now what do I do? And so I wasn't afraid, but I was like, is this just where I need to be while they're working on me? I had no clue. But then I saw these arms come towards me, and now I'm witnessing my body being held. And I'm like, oh, wow. So my soul's watching God carry my body. And I remember him placing the body on a beam of light, and there was a casket next to it. And I shouldn't have been thinking this, but I was like, that's really pretty. And it's like a glass coffin. I wonder if I could just go in and see what it feels like. And I thought, no, 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 don't ask that. That's not probably appropriate right now. So he takes me into this dome. And I said, why do we have to go in a dome? I was full of questions. It's like, because no one else in the universe can hear this. This is between you and I. So once again, the presence stood behind me. And I'm sitting at what looked like a table, and I see my lifeline contract. And now it can change. I mean, we all have free will. So I wasn't going to see my future here, but he said I was on borrowed time, but I needed to go back and I'd have a new mission and duty. So I was seeing like words like health, prosperity, voice. So I'm like, well, voice just means mediumship. That's easy. But I questioned health. I go, health, it has to say healthy. I'm not going back to that. And I saw the words change, and then he said, sign this. I'm like, oh, I'm taking an oath here. So I signed, and it was 1/21/12, and he said, look at the numbers, they're all reversible, and so is this. But I'm signing this with you. I stand in this with you. You're not doing it alone. And you'll hear later that was really important for me not to know that I was alone. Not alone, I should say. So I was told to go back. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to see my parents. And they're like, nope, nope, nope. If you see people, you probably will never go back. So I can remember floating backwards. And as I came back, it was like, think of it as a mattress that you're blowing up. And you kind of see that, the air going in. My soul went in, and I remember going, oh, like it just came up from, being held underwater. And at that moment, I was like, am I the same person? Did something just changed? And I wasn't. It shifted me to be the healer that I am today. It's like everything came together. And when I say, thank goodness God has my back and this is really my mission, it is my mission because I signed on that dotted line, but I had to lose everything how I knew it, all my financial stability, everything that was safe, solid grounds were taken away. But you can say like, if I look back at that, I really believe it was showing God that I would stand in everything to do this work, no matter what it was. And I was being molded into being strong and believing the words that were going to come through, because not only what in my healings now, Am I hearing spirit, seeing spirit, and being the voice that comes through for others, which I call the divine? That voice that I signed on that paper, I had no clue. But I don't know people and I wouldn't know the things that they're dealing with. So it has to come from a higher being. I'm just the instrument and vessel. So if I look at from the beginning to where I am now, all these life near death experiences were shifts that were blessings that got me to be where I am today.
And I think it's important for people to realize some of us need that kind of a shakeup, but you don't have to have a near-death experience to develop these abilities on some level, whatever your gifts are.
I agree with that. And I think times have changed a lot too, because back then, you know, this is over 20 years ago, mediums weren't that known. Some people are like, well, what is a medium? What does she do? That's kind of ooh, where now it's like, oh, really? People just have that understanding. So it's almost like the door is open so much that people don't have to have the shift because they already have the awakening.
So you moved into your focus being more on the healing work at this point, utilizing the mediumship within the healing work. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, so I started doing healing work, just dabbling in it at first, seeing what would come from it. And I was seeing miracles right away. And I was like, wow. So I knew that this was something I needed to do. I didn't know how. And so God led me and, he guided and taught me to do the healing work that I do today. Using my mediumship, I decided I have to do my healing work right now solely as a healer, but I do mediumship readings with it. So if somebody wants to connect with a loved one on the other side, then they can add that portion onto their healing. And it's beautiful. I'll spend the morning with the loved one, then come through with the messages. It's just I'm not on the phone with them like I would if I was, doing a reading. I'm giving that all the information to it, and then they're going to get an MP4 of the entire session, the reading and everything. And what's beautiful about that is because when I was tested as a Windbridge research medium, we weren't on the phone. We never talked to anyone. It was like it kept it totally blind. It's almost easier for me, maybe because I learned it that way, but I'm so sensitive to people. I can pick up on their energy of, oh, oh, and so it's like that almost made it harder for me. So it's nice for me to have it this way, but what's beautiful too is in my healing sessions, then I welcome that loved one in the room. So people have seen their loved ones. Now they're not part of the session, they just get the recording afterwards. But when they listen to the recording, they're seeing what I'm seeing. They're feeling, they're smelling their loved one. And then I have the ability to take them on a spiritual journey where they've embraced them and felt their physical body. It's just amazing. It takes it to a whole nother level. So I don't do it the traditional way, but I still use my abilities with my healings.
So let me ask you a quick question that's going to go back to your story. With your last illness and near death experience, obviously that was a somewhat miraculous personal healing. Did it happen very quickly? Did it still take time for you to sort of build yourself back from that? How did that happen? And then how did you notice the changes in yourself from one near death experience to the next?
Okay, so the first question, that's a really great question because a lot of people ask, like, will I heal instantaneously? Some people will, but the majority, it takes time, right? We didn't get sick just instantly. It took our bodies some time. And so I journaled a lot and I realized that and that's what I was guided to do. I was realizing I was holding on to a lot of things that needed to be voiced that I really didn't want to voice. And I listened no matter how hard it was. I mean, I fought it at first and I was like, but I listened, I walked through it. And it took me about 6 months to see the full healing. And so I always say healing is a process. So don't lose the hope during that process. You're given what you're supposed to receive. And I still had to walk through being sick, and I never found out what it was. The Mayo Clinic couldn't figure out what it was that causing me to be so sick. But I asked God, why is that? So there's a huge message for people here. Sometimes we just want to know what it is. We want that diagnosis because then other people will believe, you really have an illness or you really are going through something. It's like having a broken bone, you have a cast on, they see it, right? This is something unseen. And so I really wanted that, but I didn't get it. And it ended up being a blessing because once we are diagnosed, we hold on to that name. We become saying, I have this. And now we give power to it. And so, not knowing what I had, I will never know and never ever own it. So, that's really, really powerful. So, what was the second question? How I put all three?
So you hear a lot from people who have near-death experiences that it does open them up. You've had now multiple near-death experiences. Did you notice a shift with each one? How did it change from one incidence to the next?
I believe it was growth. It gradually did. Like the first one really opened my eyes for the afterlife. It was like it shook me. Something more is here. The second one, being out of body and seeing it, really shifted me to know there's other dimensions, and there is a greater source, and there's something there, and that we're all connected to it, and it was filled with love. And then the third one, that was being able to see the divine, see my body being held, know that there's a gift that we don't feel when we pass. Because both of those last two near death experiences, one out of body and one when I'm sick, I didn't feel my body. I floated out. You're going to pass without feeling it. So if you're witnessing somebody go through a horrific passing, just know that their loved one is not feeling that. They're already standing in the room. The body's what's struggling to shut down. And so I've learned a lot through each of these, but it also built itself on being the healer I am today so I can help people go through whatever they're going through. And then on top of that, you think that you're all done. You're doing your work. You're following your mission. I get cancer. And so I said, are you kidding me? Now what? Do I tell people that I'm a healer and I get cancer? What do I do with that? Well, sharing your truth is always the most important. But I ended up learning that through the cancer, God was teaching me once again that those that have cancer and going through cancer, I now did the walk. I now can hold their hand as I'm healing them, where before I really had no clue. I thought I had enough compassion for it, but you don't until you really experience. Even if somebody has a cancer that was worse than mine, you still have to walk and go through those same feelings. And so I used to call it my beast inside of me. And they always say fight cancer, and I chose not to. I chose to love it and then to embrace it and to talk to it. And what that taught me is I found my beauty in my beast. That love heals, and we need to always put ourselves first, honor ourselves first, walk through some difficult moments. I know there were some pretty shitty ones for me, and I can't say, oh, it was all roses. It wasn't. But I tried to do it the best I could by loving myself, letting go, let God take control so I could be free from it all, and just have gratitude in what I did have.
Deborah, and I should say for the sake of disclosure, Deborah and I are friends, and I've experienced some miraculous healings around you, and also for myself, minor things, but instantaneous healing. Could you share some of the experiences? And also, there was an incident where a gentleman was in the hospital with a serious cancer, and I think his daughter urged you to go, and that cancer was cured. That was early on in your healing work, if you remember that. I think it was spinal cancer or something. He was a retired doctor, I believe.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. So with that one, I was working with a colleague at the time, And that was in person. So I would be laying on a healing table. All my healings are now distant. It makes it easier for people, being anywhere in the world. And I laid underneath the table and he was on top. So I'm always the proxy for whoever is coming for healing. Now I use all I need is your picture and I place it on my abdomen. So imagine I'm still beneath you. So I can remember him coming in, and he was coming because his family had sent him. He was doing it for the love of his family. He was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma of the brain and the spine and had 2% chance of survival with the most intense chemo and treatment. So he's like, what do I have to lose? So he was a professor as well. In fact, he's in one of my books as well, and shares his story. And he was like, I'm in my 70s, I've had a good life. Well, in 5 days, he had a spinal tap and a brain MRI, and it was completely clear. And the doctor said, oh, there's something wrong. He goes, I'll let you do it one more time and we'll see. So they did it and it was clear. And they're like, do you want to explain what happened? He goes, no, ask my daughter. I can remember meeting with him and he just said, why me? Why me? And I said, why not you? And, we were all kind of shocked because this isn't me doing the healing work. I step aside. So I'm just as much in awe as they are. Like, wow. And it really showed the impossible is possible. So we do have instantaneous healings and we do have healings that take time. And sometimes it's a real journey. And I just keep telling people, stand in your truth and know it's your birthright to be healthy. And kind of just let go. I learned that with cancer, that I knew I was going to be good either way. And it frees you from trying to control it. Because I really believe that if we try to control it, we have resistance. We're taking control. But if we just remove ourselves from it, it just can be and it can heal.
Could you share some of your more recent healings and sort of explain how you can walk people through a healing and also share mediumship within that healing?
Sure. So if somebody contacts me through my website, right, they can tell me what's wrong with them, or they don't have to tell me what's wrong with them at all. And so they'll submit that and they'll submit a picture of themselves. I want a full body image picture. So then in the morning, I will go into the healing room. I will take their picture. I will place a vibrational music that I use. And I ask God and the spiritual surgeons to please set up the room and they state their name. So hours later, when I walk into the room, I can feel a shift in the room. Every time it feels different. And so I'll explain to them what I'm feeling. And then I go into prayer. When I go into prayer, I take their picture and I face it to a picture that I have in my healing room, where when I look into those eyes of that picture, I feel God. I feel the absolute one. And there's times where I feel a smile, times where I feel stern, Deborah, come on, here we go. And I remove my humanness aside during that and I state the name. If they wrote what they're dealing with, then I will read it. But I always go back and read it afterwards with, thank you, God, for healing this, this, and this. So first I write it how they did, then I go back with gratitude, because that's when we're standing and like, this is going to transpire. And then I go into my healing and I lay down on a healing table and I place their picture here and the magic begins. Might see spiritual surgeons. I usually, if they come, you'll get an IV. It'll start to sedate you. Sometimes people will actually feel sedated where they can't even move. And so when they listen to it, it becomes so real. That's what's wonderful about it. I want people to also know, like, different time zones, they might be sleeping, they might be working. It's okay. The healing waits for you. It will activate when you are ready. Some people never listen to it. They have sessions for people that say, I really want to do this for a loved one, but they're not going to believe in it. Is that okay? For me, I believe it is okay because it's an act of love. It's like a prayer. And so they've witnessed their loved one get healed, but they can't tell them how. So it's like, it's okay. That's all right. And so I'll start to see spiritual surgeons in the room. I might see loved ones in the room. I might see angels in the room, and I'm describing everything. And I also might feel pain because if they're going to cut open or they're going to work in a certain organ in the body, I'll be like, oh, they're here. And people are like, I feel so bad because you're taking on all the pain. It's a gift because if I feel it, I'm not going to deny that they're working in that area. But when the session's over, it's completely gone. And during that session, if a loved one comes through, I'll describe what I'm seeing. Maybe I'll see what they look like. Maybe they'll have a message that comes through. Or maybe God will say, we're going to take a spiritual journey. I need to have a conversation with you. And then you're going to also see your loved one and embrace your loved one. Pets come through. I've seen pets come through on the other side. It's mind blowing. Sometimes it's like you listen to these recordings. I wish I could just share them all because it's a story, it's a movie, and I can't make this stuff up. And they'll email back and go, "Well, you didn't know that my mother was a singer and she was singing, or I did feel my daughter hold my hand like you said." Or when you mentioned the nurse being here putting the IV in, I actually saw her. So it's far greater than anything I can explain until you experience it.
So let me ask you about your process then. Is this something that your own guides, helpers brought to you? Is it a system that you had some learning in, access to? How did you come upon your process for all of this?
I think it just kind of naturally, organically came together. I started working on healing like where the person's on top of the table and then just trusting what was going to come through. And I would start to feel things. So I'm like, oh, I'm feeling things. I can remember for the guy that we just talked about, I came home and for the rest of the day, I was out. I was out. So it can take me down. I never know what healing's gonna transpire for myself. So I will only do one a day. It could take me out for the rest of the day, or it might not affect me at all. So it kind of built on itself, but all through trust though, knowing how God would come through me. And then, so the voice was always there. That was the beginning. And I knew to always, you know, I'm just the instrument and I would see, feel, and know what's going on in the body. So I'd see that in my mind and I would hear it come through my mind. Now, then the next stage was you don't need to have people come to you anymore. It's time to do these distant. And then I stopped working with my colleague and I was like, okay, how's this going to work? And God was like, well, I'll take care of that part. Don't you worry. And so it just became like everything was meant to happen in the right order to get me where I was, but it built on itself. And now it's just like, it's almost like turning on a light switch. It's like, I'm in the room, let's go. And we go. It's sometimes if there's a lot to be healed, I'll say, angels, can you just take a note? Because I'm not going to remember everything. And they're like, Deborah, you're not supposed to remember everything. But humanly, we want to make sure we're putting 100% in. And I have to just remove myself and trust the process. And some of the stuff that comes through, it's just like, how would you even know? Yeah, it's like even childhood trauma. It'll come deep, deep down and they'll be like, I even forgot about that. How did you know that? I go, I didn't. It was given to me. Yeah.
So obviously in doing this kind of work, self-care is critically important. And it's really good that you mentioned, I think you only do one a day, and that's a full day's work right there. Now you do two types of sessions. One is a group session where what you may have up to 8 or 10 people on there. And then you do individual sessions as well. One's not necessarily better than the other. I mean, everybody gets a healing in those. So could you comment on that a little?
Yeah. So you heard my private sessions. So I do group sessions too. And a lot of people like to come to that even monthly as they're healing. And some people like to just say, oh, I need a tune up. I want to go join that again. So it's there always. They can just get on the website and actually book a session for themselves at any time. And I do that probably every 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. And the sessions are unlimited. Like I could have 15, and I think the highest I could have was 77. And I really questioned that. Like, okay, God, really? Let's see what happens. Do you know that it was even more profound? And it was like the more that gathers, right, with the same intention, the energy raises. And the feedback, and I was like, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, because you gave me the answer. And it was like, I cap it at that. I know I could do more. Like I really feel like if I was in an arena, and just like here we go. Because Gary, we witnessed it even through a Zoom.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't matter how many people are there, those that are going to be touched are going to be touched. And that's what it's like learning again. You're just kind of saying, well, what would you like me to do? And you follow it, even questioning it, and then you see the outcome. And to get the feedback and go, wow, I can see some groups, people all have the same issues. They're formed by God. And I'll write those issues down and say, what do you want the session to be about? And there's always seems to be a theme and a lesson. So that I think that's why people like to join too, because there's always something new that they're going to learn.
This is on your Army for Love gathering. See, that's where I get my monthly tune-up because
Oh yeah.
I think I've been attending those for what is it, 4 years now? 3, 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So the
So
Army for Love is different than the group.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Let's make that distinction. But there was a miraculous healing just recently on the Army for Love gathering. Would you share that with our viewers?
Yeah, first I want people to know that Army for Love is a monthly Tuesday event that's free. It's globally over Zoom. You can join through my website. And it's something that I want to give back to people. And so we join as a community and we're there to share and to uplift each other and to put love into action. So somebody might be dealing with something really hard. And, you know, everybody's so beautiful on that site because they'll share their insight and we're all helping one another. And so I never know what the theme's going to be on that. Right. Right, Gary? Like we said, I never know what the theme's going to be, but it always seems to be really pretty cool. So it's wonderful being able to talk about this because you were there to witness. And we had about over 60 people on that Zoom that day. And so at the end of the Zoom, the top of the hour, for the last 15 minutes, we'll go into a mini healing session. Basically, I just lay down like this and I close my eyes and tell everybody to turn off their video or at least their voice, their audio. And I let spirit speak through me. So Gary, you can witness that spiritual surgeons never came into the Army for Love ever in those 3 years.
They
I'm,
did
I'm
not, but
burping.
there was one. Yes, I'm thinking spirits here because that's a telltale sign, Deborah.
Yes.
You know, Suzanne Giesman's lip twitches when spirits. Deborah, she burps
Yeah,
when
I burp. So what happened was spiritual surgeons showed up in that group. And I was like, oh, I even said, spiritual surgeons are here today. This is odd. And I go, oh, we're going to get some medicine here. We're going to get sedated. And I can remember them going into my abdomen. And then I can remember them going into my neck. And I'm like, oh, my neck hurts. Oh, my neck hurts. And then I remember them putting a needle in my neck. And so I'm just speaking what I'm feeling and hearing and seeing. I have no idea. So to make it short, at the end of the session, then we allow people to share their experience. There were 2 women that had issues with their gut and felt the same pain that I was feeling. But this one, his name's Giovanni, came on for the very, very first time. He saw me on Gaia and he was like, oh, Army for Love. I was in the service and that kind of piques my interest. So I learned that, I do this healing and he's like, what do I have to lose? So he said at the top of the whole hour he was walking his dog, and then he knew that at this time he was just going to sit and be present. So he gets on, and we're just all like jaws are dropping because he starts to cry. And he says, I was healed. I received a miracle. And we're like, okay. And he's like, as soon as you said your eyes were moving, my eyes were moving. And I thought that just meant me. She's talking to me. And then you said you saw spiritual surgeons come in the room, and I saw doors to a surgery room open. And then you said you felt something in your neck, and I felt what sent this warmth and heat and feeling go into my neck. But what you don't know is I'm a retired police officer. I had to retire because I have a neck injury. I've been doing every modality that I can not to have this surgery. And if I have this surgery, I just didn't want to do it. And I was like, all right, I'll join her Army for Love. We'll see what happens. And he goes, I know that I'm healed. So at that moment, we're just like, okay, all right. And so I asked him to email me, and I followed through with him because, you could feel that might happen. But he did follow through with me. And I said, can you come on next month? And he came on next month and the following month, and he's still completely healed. It changed his entire life. But what's interesting with that night, this woman said she remembered hearing me say, when one is healed, we are all healed. And she remembered Giovanni talking about his neck. And she said, well, I have neck issues, but now I can turn my neck like this totally. Oh, wait a minute. I have full range. Wait a minute. It's not hurting. So she emails me, and I get this the next morning. She goes, I was healed too. So you see how one can be touched and not notice it till later. And it's just one was healed, the other was healed of the same issue. And it was just very profound. And these Army for Love gatherings, you just never know what's going to come from it. It was beautiful.
And really, in truth, spiritually speaking, we're all one.
We are all one. You're right. Yeah, I always like to say that too. Yes, Hallie.
So this raises the question for me. Is the person who is receiving healing, is there any responsibility on their part in participating? Do they have to accept it at a soul level, at a conscious level? Kind of, how does that work?
So what I tell people to do is, if they have a lot of expectations, write those down so that we can just release them in prayer, and that we gave them to God. People that have a lot of expectations, when they're receiving, I say, remove your expectations and just be. Because what happens when we have expectations, we're not just being, we're thinking, are they going to touch that? Are they going to work on this? And so now they're kind of just blocking what's coming, right? And so I would say their part is to open their heart up. You joined, just be for that hour that is happening, and then just be when you listen to it. Try not to analyze the words. And it seems to work that much better. But there's times where people don't listen at all, right? And they still receive. So there's no right or wrong way.
Thank you. Because a lot of people do sometimes ask, oh, well, I went for a healing and nothing happened. And so they wonder, did I do something wrong? Did I, not accept it at a soul level, even if I really, really wanted on a conscious level, And so I wondered if you have something that you tell people with regard to, whether or not they do or don't receive what they hope for. But I think you kind of answered that question, is to
I think
really
it's,
just release the desire. Yeah.
yeah, but I really like your question because it goes a little deeper too. I'm only the vessel. If I was God, I could heal everyone and everything. So I don't know what each person's going to receive, but I know they're going to receive something. And I've witnessed it come in different form. Like this person wanted cancer. It's in one of my books. This person wanted cancer healed. That's what she came for, I should say. And what happened is she was healed from her childhood trauma. And she told me that was really more important to her than the cancer itself. And she ended up passing. and saying that that was more of a gift because she didn't pass with any baggage. And so it came in a whole different form. I wanted the other humanly, but I have to remove that. And it's like they just come in different ways, and we have to be open to all ways. But I also say too, like, you might think you didn't receive it right away because you don't see instant gratification. I didn't either. Remember, it took me 6 months, but I didn't ignore it. I stood in that faith. I think it's very important for you to say, what are you saying every day? What are your words? Are you negative? Saying, no, I'm sick. I don't feel well. I have cancer. And you just keep giving that power, or you have that healing. What kind of thoughts are you going to put in there? What's your mantras? And God usually gives mantras for them to say afterwards. Stand in your faith during it. Trust the process. I had to. Mine wasn't instant, but it shows you that if you do, you're receiving, if it's not the ultimate, you're still receiving other blessings as you heal.
And what you need.
Exactly what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Could you share a couple more of your recent healings? Because they're great stories and we love to hear them. So,
Yeah, one that I know that they could actually witness and listen to her speak is on my YouTube channel. So that's at Debra Martin Healer. And so I think it's really important to talk about mental illness. Mental illness is really hard. I lost my father to suicide from that. And I was just at a luncheon with someone yesterday, and we were talking about what others think about people that commit suicide. They're quick to judge and say, oh, that's so selfish. You never walked in their shoes, and this is an illness. And so this girl came into the session. I didn't know what she was coming for. And in the session, God took her on a spiritual journey and talked to her. I could feel the heaviness. I could feel the grief. I could feel them rewiring the brain. I could feel them restoring the brain, shifting it. And I felt a lightness afterwards. And she said, it's a powerful short little clip that you can watch, but she speaks about how she tried to commit suicide 3 or more times, that she was in a mental institute. This was 20 years of mental illness. And immediately, she felt that the light switch just turned on and she was no longer holding that. And she's like, I never saw the light look like the light outside. I never saw the sun look like the sun outside. I always saw like a fog, and everything immediately changed for her. And she was miraculously healed. So it's called the miraculous healing on mental illness, the title. But it's touching something like mental illness. That was huge for me, because I don't want to take away from any other illness, but it seems to be the one that's really hard to get the diagnosis, to figure out what to do. And I wanted to say, I was so proud of you, God, for doing what happened for this beautiful lady. And that's where it is. It's not me. I just am so happy for people. I get to know them like on a soul level. I feel what they feel and want to cry with them during these sessions. And so I'm crying. And so when they listen to it, it's like, how did you know me so well? And it's because I was given that insight. It's just beautiful.
Really grateful for all that you're doing and your willingness to share it in very public formats, because I know that that itself is a courageous act, and we're grateful for your willingness to do it.
Well, I'm grateful for you guys letting me share this on a platform. I think it's important for people to hear that miracles are still happening, and miracles surround us each and every day. They're all around us. And take a walk outside, you'll see all the beauty that surrounds us. And just never lose hope. Just never lose hope. Because I feel when we lose that hope, that's when we get into trouble,
and
right?
remember that you're an eternal being. I think that's really important to keep a perspective on. Debra, how can people find out more about the work you're doing or sign up for a healing if they want to, or Army for Love?
So everything's through my website at www.goldenmiracles.com. Make sure it says smiracles.com. If they just Google Debra Martin, it will come up. But if you go to the healing page, they'll have a distant group healing where people can register right there and automatically be part of that group. Or they can go to scroll down and go to the private part, private healing, and register for a private. And then they'll be taken to like the calendar. And I think it comes back to us. We email you first and then give you the calendar if you want to register for a session. And for Army for Love, there's a tab called Army for Love on the website. If you scroll down, the Zoom link is right there. And it's 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time right now on the first Tuesday of every month.
Yes, and Army for Love is free. So show up, share your journey with us. So
Or just comes. A lot of people just come to kind of like I was. I'm interested. What is this all about? I want to see what it's about. Just come and feel the love, be embraced by love, and check it out. You don't even have to say a word.
yeah, when I first heard the title Army for Love, I thought, I'm kind of anti-military, not anti-military, but I never wanted to be in the military, but that's an army I could join.
Do you want to know where I got that from? Okay, so I was going through cancer and I was thinking of a name and I was on the radiation table. That was my God time. And so I heard Army for Love. I said, why? Because you build your army and you surround it with love when you're going through a hard time. And know that spirit is on all four sides, in front of you to walk ahead of you, behind you so that you never fall, and both sides of you to carry you as you walk. And so it really became profound to me. I'm like, oh, I like that. How many times do we have to build our army and know we can't do it alone? And it's okay to have that army that's going to support you. I can remember sharing it with Suzanne Giesman, and she was like, oh, I like that name. Yeah.
Well, and she's military.
Right.
That's
She's
her
military.
background.
So it's
Yes.
like,
I did not mean to imply the military is in any way bad. What I was saying was, for
oh,
me,
right.
the only army I would join would be one of love.
Do you know, it's really a tough one right now, because even other people that I speak with, like PR people and stuff, they question, should we change it? Because there's a lot of army and war going on right now. And
no,
I was like, we have to keep it because it was given to me, and it has a whole nother meaning to it. And so we need to not always look at the term of a name and see darkness. We can see light from everything too. And that goes to another point. If you get diagnosed with anything, any one of you, remember that's a scientific term that was given to what you're going through. God did not come up with that term, like a tree is a tree. But God did not come up with that name. So don't give that name power. When we hear ALS or we hear dementia, we all go, ooh, right? No. Just say, you know what? That's just a little piece of me. It's not all of me.
And I should say, I have attended one of your Army for Love sessions. And the thing that I noted more than anything was just the energy. I got that sort of lit up feeling that I get when I can feel the energetics of a group in a situation. And it was so strong and powerful in your
I
group.
forgot
So I
that you
really
were there.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, you were.
I
Yeah.
did.
That's where I
I
met you
did
the
visit
first
one time.
time. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. I hope you can come again. It's also not just me that lifts the room. It's people like you that bring the light into the room too. We collectively do it together.
Debra, that's just absolutely beautiful. Look forward to seeing you again soon, beginning of the month. And Army for Love takes place the first Tuesday of the month, correct? Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you. Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Thank you so much.
You.
And lots of love to you,
Lots of
and
love to you too.
we'll see you soon.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.